All right, let's dive into this deep dive you requested, all about overcoming procrastination. And, from what I've been reading in these sources you sent over, it seems like procrastination, it's not some kind of personal failing or anything. It's like a universal human experience, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely. I mean, everyone struggles with procrastination to some degree. It's not just laziness or a lack of willpower. It's actually way more nuanced than that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm getting from all this, too. It seems like it's more about this, like, battle between our rational side and our emotional side. Like, two different parts of our brains are duking it out.
Yeah. You know that TED Talk by Tim Urban? He actually calls it the instant gratification monkey versus the panic monster.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one.
So, like, our logical brain, it wants to plan and set goals, but then that instant gratification monkey, that emotional part of our brain, it just wants to do what feels good right
You
now.
tell me about it.
And that panic monster only shows up when the deadline is so close. And then suddenly, the fear of consequences outweighs that desire for immediate pleasure.
I think we've all met that panic monster a few times, haven't we? But before we get too deep into monkey business,
Yeah.
can we back up a little? Can we clarify exactly what we're talking about when we say procrastination?
Sure, yeah. So the sources talk about two main types: explicit procrastination and implicit procrastination.
Okay, so explicit is like what we typically think of as procrastination.
Yeah, exactly. So it's putting off tasks that have a clear deadline, like that report that's due next week,
Oh, yeah.
or finally booking that doctor's appointment you've been putting off.
Oh, yeah.
Easy to recognize, not always easy to deal with, right?
Right. Because that deadline is staring you right in the face. But then what about implicit procrastination? That's a little fuzzier, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's more about things that don't have a set deadline, like starting that business you've always dreamed of,
Hmm.
or learning a new language. Because there's no external pressure, it can be harder to even realize you're procrastinating.
And probably even harder to overcome it, right?
Absolutely, because that panic monster might never show up.
Mm.
So that instant gratification monkey can kind of run the show indefinitely.
Okay, I see what you mean. So like with explicit procrastination, we have that external deadline to trigger the panic monster.
Yeah,
But with implicit procrastination, we kind of have to create that sense of urgency ourselves. So
exactly.
we need different strategies for each type of procrastination.
Right. And for that implicit procrastination, for those big fuzzy goals without deadlines, I came across this really interesting tool in one of the sources.
Okay, tell me more.
It's called a life calendar. And it comes from a book called Execution is the Answer by Korean psychologist Lee Min-kyu.
Okay.
The basic idea is you visualize your entire lifespan as a grid, let's say 90 years, with each square on the grid representing a week of your life.
Okay.
Then you shade in all the weeks that have already passed.
Wow.
It's kind of a sobering exercise.
So I can imagine.
But it really makes you confront the reality of your finite time.
Yeah, bet.
And it makes those goals that seem like they can wait forever, they suddenly feel a lot more urgent.
Yeah, I can see how that would work. So the life calendar is kind of a way to add a deadline to those big picture goals.
Hmm.
But what about more general strategies for overcoming procrastination? Whether it's explicit or implicit?
Well, Min-kyu, he actually breaks down the process of overcoming procrastination into three key stages:
Okay, I like this.
making the decision, taking action, and then sticking with it.
Gotcha.
And these stages can apply to any type of
All
procrastination.
right, so stage one is making the decision. Where do people usually go wrong in this stage?
A lot of times we get caught up in visualizing that end result, that feeling of accomplishment.
Oh, yeah, I get that.
But the problem is that premature satisfaction can actually prevent us from taking action.
It's like we're celebrating the victory before we've even run the race.
Yeah, exactly. And it tricks our brains into thinking we've already done the hard work.
So we're satisfied without actually accomplishing anything.
Right. And so Minyu's solution to this is, instead of visualizing the end result, we should visualize the process itself.
Oh,
So, like, instead of daydreaming about crossing the finish line, we need to map out the route we're going to take to get there.
I like that analogy.
So, for example, let's say you want to learn to speak fluent Italian. Instead of fantasizing about ordering pasta in Rome,
Which I do all the time.
right, instead of that, break it down. Ask yourself, how many words do I need to learn to have a basic conversation?
Right.
And then, research shows that knowing 3,000 words lets you understand about 95% of conversations in a language.
Wow, 3,000 words. That's a lot.
It is, but then you break it down further. Let's say you give yourself 3 months to learn those 3,000 words. That's 1,000 words per month, which is about 34 words per day.
Okay, so it becomes more manageable.
Exactly, and suddenly it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
That's a great example. Okay, so we've made the decision, visualized the process, and broken it down into smaller steps.
Hmm.
So, on to stage 2, taking action. What are the common pitfalls in this stage?
Well, the problem is thinking is fun. Doing is not always so fun.
Oh, I know that feeling.
So our brains naturally gravitate towards the path of least resistance.
Which is usually procrastination, right?
Exactly. And so Minkyu suggests this interesting tactic, setting a last start time.
A last start time.
Oh.
Okay, what's that?
It's basically using our procrastination tendencies to our advantage.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So let's say you have a project you've been putting off. Instead of setting a start date, set a last start time. Tell yourself, if I don't start this by tomorrow at 2 p.m., I'm abandoning it completely.
So you're creating this, like, artificial deadline for yourself.
Yeah, and it often triggers that panic monster we talked about earlier. Because you've created this mini emergency for yourself, and that fear of missing the deadline can be a really powerful motivator.
That's so clever.
And another important thing for this taking action stage is eliminating those warm-up activities that we often use to delay the real work.
Oh, you mean like checking email, scrolling social media?
Exactly, all those things that we do instead of the actual task we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, those warm-up activities can easily turn into hours of wasted time.
They really can. So, set boundaries, turn off distractions, and just dive right into the work.
It's like we have to outsmart our own brains. Okay, so getting started is all about overcoming that initial inertia. But what about sticking with it? That's where I personally struggle the most.
Yeah, that third stage, sticking with it, that's often the hardest part. And this is where accountability comes in.
Okay, how does that work?
One really effective technique is to announce your plan publicly.
Oh, so like tell people what you're going to do.
Yeah, tell your friends, family, even post it on social media.
So you're putting it out there for the world to see.
Exactly. And by doing that, you create a sense of social pressure.
So there's some external motivation there.
Right, but you're also building a support system at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And another thing that can really help with accountability is commit to reporting your progress regularly. Share your successes, share your struggles. It keeps you motivated, and you get valuable feedback along the way.
Yeah, because then you're kind of having to answer for it, right?
Right.
So public accountability is a powerful tool. What are some other strategies for sticking with it?
The sources highlighted 3 additional tips. First one is prioritize effectiveness over efficiency.
What does that mean exactly?
It means focusing on achieving the desired outcome, not just working hard for the sake of working hard.
So it's about quality over quantity.
Exactly. Ask yourself, am I actually moving closer to my goal? Or am I just spinning my wheels and staying busy?
That's a really good point.
Oh.
Okay, what's the second tip for sticking with it?
The second one is share what you learn.
Oh, I like that.
Teaching others reinforces your own knowledge, and it keeps you accountable.
Yeah, because you have to really understand it if you're going to teach it to someone else.
Exactly, and it can also be a great way to inspire other people.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the final tip for maintaining that persistence?
This one might sound a little extreme, but it can be super effective. Create a desperate situation.
The desperate situation. Okay, I'm listening.
It's about eliminating distractions and temptations to force yourself to focus.
Oh. Yeah.
So, let's say you're trying to learn to code. Create a desperate situation by turning off your phone, disconnecting from the internet, and going to a quiet library where you have nothing but your coding books.
So you're removing all escape routes, essentially.
Exactly. You're creating a situation where you have no choice but to focus on the task at hand.
So it's like survival mode for your goals.
I love that, yes. Survival mode for your goals.
This is all such great information. I'm feeling much more equipped to tackle my own procrastination challenges.
That's great to hear. And remember, it's all about progress, not perfection.
So true.
There will be times when you slip up, but the key is to learn from those experiences, adjust your strategies, and keep moving forward.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
This has been such an insightful first part of our deep dive. And for all of you listening out there, we'd like to leave you with a little challenge.
Okay, I like this.
Think about a task, big or small, that you've been putting off.
Yeah, anything at all.
Now, here's the challenge. Set a last start time for that task.
Pick a specific date and time, and tell yourself, if I don't start by then, I'm abandoning it completely.
It might just surprise you how that little bit of self-imposed pressure can unlock a whole new level of motivation and action.
I think it will.
We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into the fascinating world of procrastination.
Sounds good. That last start time thing, it's pretty clever, huh?
It is. It is. It's like a little mental trick to get ourselves moving.
As I was looking through these sources, though, I came across another point that I thought was interesting. It seems like trying too hard to fight procrastination can actually backfire.
Really. That seems kind of counterintuitive.
What?
Wouldn't ignoring those urges just make us more productive?
Well, logically, yeah. But it seems like the more we try to suppress those urges, the stronger they get.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah, it's like holding a beach ball underwater. Eventually, it's just going to pop back up with even more force.
that's a great analogy. So instead of fighting it, we need to learn to kind of work with it.
Exactly. Acceptance is key. Acknowledge those urges, but don't let them control you. Try to understand what's driving those urges.
So it's more about getting curious about our procrastination habits.
Exactly. Instead of beating ourselves up for it,
Right. Right.
ask yourself, what is it about this particular task that makes me want to avoid it? Is
Right.
it fear of failure? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Or am I just bored?
That's a good point.
Once you kind of identify that root cause, you can sort of address it in a more constructive way.
Yeah, because it's like procrastination is a symptom, not the disease itself.
Exactly. And one of the sources I read, they talked about the importance of self-compassion in this process.
Oh, I love that. Self-compassion. So how does that tie into overcoming procrastination?
Well, it's really easy to be super critical of ourselves when we
Oh,
procrastinate.
yeah, totally.
But instead of dwelling on those past mistakes, try to approach yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend who was struggling.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's about extending that same grace to ourselves that we would give to others.
Absolutely. Remember that everyone procrastinates sometimes.
Yeah, we're all human.
It's a normal part of being human. Be kind to yourself, forgive yourself, and, just keep practicing those strategies that help you stay on track.
I like that. It's a good reminder. And it reminds me of something else that came up in these sources, celebrating those small victories.
Yes, that's so important.
So instead of waiting until we achieve that big ultimate goal, we should take the time to acknowledge and appreciate those little steps along the way.
Absolutely. It keeps your motivation going. It's like giving yourself those little dopamine hits to fuel the journey.
I like that, yeah. It's about building positive associations with the whole process.
Exactly. And those positive associations, they can be really powerful.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding our triggers, developing strategies, and cultivating self-compassion. What else in these sources stood out to you?
Well, one thing that really struck me was the emphasis on the role of environment in shaping our procrastination habits.
Oh, interesting. How does our environment affect our tendency to procrastinate?
Well, our physical surroundings can either support or sabotage our habits. So think about it. If your workspace is cluttered and chaotic, it's going to be a lot harder to focus and stay on task.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Clutter is my enemy.
But it's not just about physical clutter. Think about your digital environment too. Are you constantly bombarded with notifications and distraction?
Oh my gosh, yes. My phone is like a black hole for my attention.
Right. I think we all struggle with those digital distractions these days. So the key takeaway here is to be intentional about creating an environment, both physical and digital, that supports your goals.
So it's about setting ourselves up for success by minimizing those environmental triggers that can lead us down that procrastination rabbit hole.
Exactly. And there are some really practical things you can do. Like declutter your workspace, get rid of anything that's not essential for the task at hand.
Yeah, good old-fashioned tidying up.
Exactly. And for your digital space, turn off notifications, silence your phone, or even you can use website blockers to limit your access to those time-sucking websites.
Those can be really helpful. It doesn't have to be all or nothing either. Even just short bursts of focused work with limited distractions can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Small changes to your environment can have a big impact on your ability to focus. Oh, and there's one more environmental factor that's often overlooked:
Hope that.
the company we keep.
Oh, interesting. So our social circles.
Yeah, think about it. If you're surrounded by people who are constantly procrastinating or complaining or just generally being unproductive, it's going to be a lot harder for you to stay motivated.
Yeah, so it's like procrastination can be contagious.
In a way, yeah. We're social creatures. We tend to mirror the behaviors of those around us.
That's a good point.
So make sure you surround yourself with people who inspire you, who support your goals and hold you accountable.
That's a great reminder. So when it comes to our environment, we need to pay attention to our physical space, our digital space, and our social space.
Yeah, all three are important. It's about taking control of those external factors and creating an ecosystem that supports our goals.
This is all such valuable information. I'm feeling a lot more empowered to tackle my own procrastination. But it makes me wonder, are some people just naturally more prone to procrastination than others? Like, are there certain personality types that struggle with it more?
That's a great question, and researchers have actually looked into that. There's some evidence that certain personality traits, like perfectionism, fear of failure, and low self-efficacy, can contribute to procrastination.
Oh, that makes sense. Those kinds of traits could definitely lead to avoidance behaviors. But is it like a set in stone thing? Are some people just doomed to be procrastinators?
Not at all. Remember, procrastination is a habit, and habits can be changed.
Okay, yeah.
Even if you have some of those personality traits, it doesn't mean you're destined to be a chronic procrastinator.
So there's hope for everyone.
There is, absolutely. It might take a bit more effort and self-awareness, but by understanding those underlying tendencies and developing strategies to work with them, you can definitely break free from that procrastination cycle.
That's reassuring. It brings up another question, though. What about when we're procrastinating on something? That's actually really important to us. It's like we're sabotaging ourselves.
Yeah, that's a really common experience, actually. Sometimes the things that matter most to us also carry the most weight.
So the pressure we put on ourselves can actually backfire.
Exactly. That fear of failure, of not living up to our own expectations, it can be paralyzing. And it often leads to procrastination as a way to protect ourselves.
So we're avoiding the task to avoid the potential pain of not succeeding.
Right, it's a defense mechanism.
That's interesting.
And in those situations, it's really crucial to acknowledge those fears, challenge those negative thoughts, and remind yourself that mistakes and setbacks are a natural part of learning and growing.
Yeah, that's such an important reminder. It's not just about productivity hacks, it's also about mindset.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a healthier mindset around our goals and our abilities.
Speaking of mindset, one of the sources mentioned this concept of decision fatigue.
Oh, yeah, decision fatigue.
How does that tie into procrastination?
Well, as we make decisions throughout the day, our mental energy gets depleted.
So we basically get tired of making decisions.
Right, our willpower weakens. And when that happens, we're more likely to make impulsive choices, which often means choosing instant gratification over long-term goals.
Oh, so that's when procrastination sneaks in.
Exactly. We're tired, our brains are fried, and the path of least resistance starts to look really appealing.
It makes sense. So are there any strategies for combating decision fatigue?
Definitely. One helpful tip is to try to make important decisions early in the day.
When our willpower is still strong.
Exactly. Save those mindless tasks, like checking email or doing laundry, for later in the day when your decision-making power is a bit lower.
That's a good tip. This is making me realize that procrastination is so much more complex than we often think.
It really is.
It's not just laziness, it's about understanding how our brains work and adapting our habits accordingly.
Exactly. It's about working with our brains, not against them.
And one of the sources had another interesting point about that, identifying our peak productivity times.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
So what does that mean?
Well, we all have natural rhythms throughout the day. Some people are most alert and focused in the morning. Others are more productive in the evening.
So it's about figuring out when we're naturally most energized.
Exactly. And then the key is to schedule your most challenging tasks for those peak productivity windows.
So if you're a morning person, do your hardest work first thing in the morning.
Exactly. And if you're a night owl, save your creative work for the evening hours.
I love that. It's like working with your natural energy instead of fighting against it.
Right.
This whole deep dive is so fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
I love how it's connecting our biology, our psychology, and our behavior.
Yeah, it all comes back to that idea that procrastination isn't a personal failing. It's a human tendency, and we can learn to manage it by understanding ourselves better.
Well, this second part of our deep dive has been packed with so much great information.
It has, hasn't it?
I feel like we're really starting to unpack the complexities of procrastination
We're getting there,
and develop a more nuanced understanding of how to overcome it.
and there's still more to come.
I can't wait to see what else we discover in the final part of our deep dive. This deep dive has been, like, eye-opening, honestly. We started out feeling kind of overwhelmed by this whole procrastination thing, and now I feel like we actually have some tools to deal with it. But what's really hit home for me is it's not just about getting stuff done, checking things off a to-do list.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's about creating a whole mindset, a lifestyle that supports you in making progress on the things that really matter to you.
Exactly. It's not about just doing more. It's about doing what matters. And I remember one of the sources actually talked about aligning your actions with your values.
Oh, yeah, that's so important.
So it's like when we're working towards goals that are meaningful to us, we're way less likely to procrastinate.
It's like our motivation comes from within, not from some external pressure.
Right, exactly. It's driven by purpose.
So, when you're setting goals, making that action plan, take some time to think about your core
Yeah,
values.
like what's truly important to
Right,
me.
what kind of life do I want to create?
Those are big questions.
They are, but they can help you clarify your priorities and make sure you're investing your time and energy in the right places.
Yeah, the things that are actually going to bring you fulfillment.
Exactly. And speaking of fulfillment, one of the sources talked about this idea of finding flow.
Flow. I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's that state of being totally absorbed in an activity
Oh.
where time just seems to fly by, you're totally engaged, energized. Sometimes people describe it as being in the zone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I've felt that before.
And research shows that flow isn't just enjoyable, it's also super productive.
So how do we find this flow state? Is there a secret?
Well, there's no magic formula or anything. But it seems like flow happens when we're doing something challenging enough to keep us stimulated, but not so overwhelming that we get discouraged.
So it's like finding that sweet spot between boredom and anxiety.
Exactly. It's also important to have a clear sense of purpose and to feel like you're making progress towards a meaningful goal.
So it's not just about the task itself, it's also about the meaning behind it.
Right, and the progress you're making.
Okay, that makes sense.
And on that note, one of the sources had a great suggestion for staying motivated. Break down those big goals into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Yeah, that's classic advice, but why is it so effective?
Well, for one thing, it makes those big goals seem a lot less daunting. And as you complete each step, you get a little hit of dopamine, which motivates you to keep going.
So it's like a reward system.
Exactly, a positive feedback loop.
I like it. Small steps, big rewards.
And as we're talking about breaking down goals, it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to overcoming procrastination.
Right, we're all different.
We have different strengths, weaknesses, preferences. The key is to experiment. Find what works best for you. Create a personalized procrastination busting plan.
Love it, a tailored approach. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what final words of wisdom would you offer to our listeners? The ones who are ready to tackle their procrastination head on.
I'd say be patient with yourself. Overcoming procrastination, it's a process, not a quick fix.
Yeah, it's a journey.
There will be setbacks, challenges along the way,
Yeah.
but don't let those discourage you.
It's about getting back up and trying again.
Exactly, and remember all those strategies we talked about. Understanding your triggers, setting clear goals, breaking things down, creating a supportive environment, celebrating those small wins, and most importantly, being kind to yourself.
Self-compassion, yes.
So keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep moving forward, one step at a time.
Beautifully said. And for everyone listening out there, we hope this deep dive has been helpful, inspiring even. And we encourage you to take what you've learned and apply it to your own lives. Start creating the change you want to see. Because you have the power within you to overcome procrastination and achieve those goals that you've been dreaming of.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, we're so glad you joined us for this deep dive into the world of procrastination. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.